One of the most challenging skills in chess is being able to take a position where you have a very small advantage and transforming that and converting that into a win. And usually the best players in the world, that is exactly what makes them so good. When you think about Magnus, about Hikaru, it's their ability to squeeze positions for every single possibility within them, to squeeze water from rock. And that is really an important skill that you want to develop. And this game here does show you a little bit about the things that you should be thinking about when you're trying to employ this technique. So let's go ahead and look at this game. This is game number 10 from Bobby Fischer's 60 Memorable Games. We are 1/6 way across the entire book. So Bobby Fischer is playing with the white pieces, and the interesting thing about this game is that it takes the same opening course as game number 6 up until move 20 or so. And one of the things that I've noticed in this book is there's a lot of repeating opening ideas, which is why, frankly, I don't go so into depth on the opening. I think the interesting uniqueness of each game really shines when we get to the middle game, when we get to the end game, where we can really take away very specific and individual lessons from each game. I think the openings are quite similar in nature to ones that we've already seen. Again, this is an exact position to game 6. We've already seen this very position where, Fischer has this idea of taking and then going g5. This was a very, famous idea that he employed a lot and one that we've looked at already. The point is that if they were to take, we then go knight to d5. I've discussed this in game 6. We want to basically take control of the dark squares. There's tactical reasons why they can't take the knight here. And so this would actually be good for white. So instead, the move knight c4 was played. We have knight to g4. And after bishop takes, queen takes, the big difference happened here. Black went for f6. In the previous game of this opening, we saw a different strategy. White is trying to attack along the h-file here with something like this. So in the previous game, Black went for and tried to go for a defensive setup, which involved going knight b6, knight d7, knight f8. In this game, Black tried a different defensive setup, which involved being a bit more aggressive, and they went f6 here, which comes with a ton of weaknesses. This king is far more weakened. There's some other issues with f6, generally speaking, but the point is it's a much more energetic move as well, because it gives Black more space, and after g takes and bishop takes, Black indeed has some possibilities of their own, and so it's definitely a different playing style to what we've seen, and this is sort of when the uniqueness of this game, I think, shines. Now, what you'll notice here is that although white does have a small edge, it's nothing major. I mean, their queen is slightly better, they have the two bishops, but Black's rooks seem quite good. They seem like they oppose white's rooks, so how could white really go about starting to transition this game? Well, they start by taking control of the other open file, right? Making small improvements, and this is what really takes you to the next level. You take a piece that isn't doing anything, and you slide it over to a square where suddenly it has some potential. Even if you don't know exactly what it's doing there yet, it is clear, abundantly clear, that the rook is better on this square. It has so much more potential and life on the d file. So we have king to h8, we have b3, the bishop drops back, queen to h4, and suddenly you see these rooks and queens starting to work together. There's already some threats here, and maybe this is a first key moment. If Black does something random, let's say b4, what is white threatening? What can white play here that is really strong? So the move in this position is rook takes a8, a very strong idea. The point is that after rook captures, we have this nice idea of going rook d8, using the queen and rook together, and it's already very difficult. If you take, we are obviously just going to take back, and it's actually just checkmating now after this, and therefore going backwards, they have to first go bishop to f8, but okay, we continue. In this position, we can take and use some of this tactic, but also the simple bishop h6 also should suffice. So going back, this is some of the venom that white has in this position brewing, and so Black decides to go bishop f6, kick that away and trade pieces, trying to simplify the position, and trade even another pair of pieces, the rooks now. And this is an exact position after knight d7 where you're thinking, what should I do as white? I mean, Maybe you can claim that white is better because the king is exposed, I have the open A file, but what do you actually do with these very small and otherwise insignificant advantages? What can you actually churn them into? And again, you want to look at your pieces and really ask them whether or not they're happy. And this rook is really nice here on the A file. This queen is quite a powerful piece here, controlling the dark squares. This bishop, not so much though, right? It's staring into its own pawn. It doesn't have potential and life on the C2 square, hence the move bishop D1. Right? This is the exact thought process that you need to have if you want to take your chess to the next level. Now the bishop can come to E2 and pose some immediate threats. The bishop can come to G4, where it also could be a problem for black. So the bishop ultimately has many more possibilities along this D1 and H5 diagonal. We have knight F6. We have rook a7. The rook also begins to infiltrate once again. The rook is good here. How can we make it better? Let's get it still on the A file, the open A file, but also on the 7th rank. Again, the bishop, where do we want it? Let's put it on E2, start posing some questions. These slow, small improvements do build up, and eventually they build up to a point where black won't be able to handle them all, and this is actually the exact point that you see on the screen. This simple problem with the pawn here on b5 cannot be solved. This pawn cannot be defended. There's no good way to defend it. The queen already has some responsibility tied down to the knight. So if the queen tries to defend it, you could certainly consider taking here, and then the queen takes, let's say, and then you can take the knight. If they push, for example, one of the possibilities that you have is going rook a6. Now this diagonal is open. Let's take advantage of that. There's some issues with the knight. They do have this nice tactic of going knight e4, but it doesn't help them. We go queen to h4, hit the knight, hit the queen. The queen has to defend, but now bishop f3. You can see the slight activity that all of our pieces have really work together. They're coordinated, and they allow for these nice tactics. So going backwards, they don't really have good ways to defend. I mean, they can defend with the rook, but that's also quite sad, and also allows this rook to infiltrate, this time through the f7 square. The knight is attacked, and after the knight moves, look at how passive black is. There's a million different ideas here. You can go even rook d7, where the point is after queen takes, we take here, and we're going to win back the rook with interest. We want a pawn. We have still a ton of pressure. This is a great position for us. So going back to this position, black realized they're losing the pawn. They decided to try to trade a pair of rooks while they lose the pawn to at least simplify the position and try to head towards an endgame where they're down a pawn, but endgames are famous for being able to draw positions where you are down material. So bishop takes b5, we have king to g7, but Fischer won't let black draw this game. And one of the keys in endgames is to develop a plan, right? You want a strategy that you can hold on to and generate moves from. And so the plan here, and I urge you to pause and try to think for your own, the plan here, though, for white is to create passed pawns. Usually when you have passed pawns, preferably multiple passed pawns, you can split your opponent's resources, force them into passivity, and slowly continue to make progress and eventually promote your passed pawns. And that's what our plan is here. We have the potential of a passed pawn by going b4, that's one idea, and we have the second potential of a passed pawn by going g3 and f4, that's the second idea. Now, of course, you don't go g3, and f4 immediately in these positions. Your king could be weak, you're hanging pawns. These are long-term plans. I'm not telling you to immediately go for them. You want to slowly maneuver your position in such a way where you defend everything to make these plans possible. And this is, again, a key idea when it comes to playing in a very positional and strong manner. So this is exactly what Fischer does. He makes these small moves, setting up ideas of expansion. We have the move king g2, again, not going for f4 immediately, first slowly improving the king's placement. We have queen to a5, the queen simply rotating, queen d3, once again improving the placement of the queen. Queen to b6, queen to c4, slow improvements. Queen to c6, and after bishop d3, finally b4 is possible. White made enough improvements to allow for b4 with very, a very effective placement. Now we have the passed pawn, but what is better than one passed pawn? It is a second one. So again, f4 is an idea, but again, you don't rush to it. So after the move knight g4, you don't run with f4. That could be quite dangerous with the queen potentially coming in. So first, the queen trade was offered, making small improvements. In this case, it was accepted, and then you can continue with f4. Once everything is safe and solid, the king comes in, we go bishop b5, we're grabbing space, we eventually continue pushing our pawns. Here knight e8 was played. Notice that black could take, but then among other things we can continue by going c7, the king moves, and then e5, continuing to push forward, always playing with a lot of energy. Notice, by the way, knight e8 impossible here because of the move bishop b5, where we win the knight and easily convert this position. So going back, they could take, but not so effective either. They decided going knight e8 was better, a bit of a passive decision, but okay, it does do the job of defending against the c7 square, but it's not enough. We take here, now we have two files where passed pawns are on, right? We have the c file and the e file. We have actually three passed pawns in theory, because these double pawns serve as more fuel for us to be able to promote. And actually these passed pawns, the ones here stacked, do become really critical, as you'll see. So white continues here. I think white played a bit more cautiously than they had to. For example, king c5 I think is a great move here, trying to just continue attacking and going aggressive. But white decided, let's not give black any chance. I see they're trying to make a passed pawn. I'm not going to allow it. King to e3. I'm going to march over here and disturb their passed pawns. And that's exactly what he did. And he ended up actually, Fischer just took this pawn, giving black absolutely zero counterplay. And finally, king g5 and black resign. And this is what I was talking about. The two pawns here, really important, because if it was just one, black would have incredible drawing chances, because all they have to do is orchestrate a situation where they even sack the pawn, the knight for the pawn, or they trade the knight for the bishop in such a way where they gain opposition and draw. So the two pawns here do allow Fischer to win. So this was, I think, a really illustrative game. Slow advantages, right? Taking a position that otherwise could seem very dry and really squeezing it for all it could potentially have, which really meant taking the pieces that aren't so impressive, like this bishop, and making them have a brighter future, improving the rook, improving the bishop, trading and then taking a pawn and slowly creating these plans that don't aim to checkmate the opponent, but aim to slowly maneuver the position in such a way where we keep a slight initiative and a healthy advantage. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you're new around here. Like this video if you learned something new from it. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.